All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for coming to our Ask the Experts webinar. I'm Tyler Power, and I'm the Director of Government Affairs for the Quad Cities Chamber. The Chamber is working right alongside all of our businesses in our region during this difficult time, and we're keeping you up to date through our COVID-19 blog on our website, quadcitieschamber.com. If you haven't signed up for our e-news yet, you can do so on our website. The Chamber will continue to host virtual events just like this one on topics that matter most to businesses. The Chamber is here to serve businesses in our region, and we know that together we win. Now, this webinar is going to be recorded and posted on the Chamber website later this afternoon. We will address the most frequently asked questions and take questions from our participants. If you have a question, you should submit it at the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Now, joining us today is a panel of experts for an informational session on what employers need to know to help combat the effects of COVID-19. Each panelist is going to give some opening remarks, and then we will open it up for questions. Again, if you have a question, use the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. So now, I'm going to introduce our panel. We have Carrie O'Neill, who is the Quad Cities Market President for Wells Fargo Bank. Tom Trone, who is the Chapter Chair for Quad Cities SCORE. Joel Youngs, Regional Director for the Small Business Development Center, or SBDC, at Eastern Iowa Community Colleges. And we also have Ryan Gleason, the Manager of the Great Lakes Regional Office for the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ryan to begin the program. Ryan?
Thanks, Tyler, and thank you for having me on this afternoon. I wish it was in a different circumstance, but I first want to start off by saying that help is here and more help is on the way. So last Friday, the president signed into the CARES Act, and I'm just going to try and run through it as best as I can with you. It was a $2 trillion package that was it's about 10% of our regular GDP. The package is designed to be robust because the idea that this will be a bridge to help avoid us from a prolonged recession and downturn. And once regular commerce can begin, we can begin resuming normal commerce. There were a couple of provisions in this package, though, that greatly help small business, self-employed, independent contractors, and non-for-profits. The provision that's getting the most attention is called the Paycheck Protection Program. It's a $349 billion in loans for small businesses that are generally defined as employers with less than 500 employees, the 501c3s, the self-employed, sole proprietors, and independent contractors. A way of thinking about this is if your business is generally qualified for an SBA program, you're going to qualify for this program. In addition to that, some employers, some businesses who would not qualify have been added to that list. This again includes independent contractors and self-employed. It also includes restaurants and hotel folks who would be otherwise ineligible because if you add up their locations, they have more than 500 employees. Under this bill, it says we're going to judge you in the accommodation and food services business as per location basis. So don't automatically assume if you're a regular SBA program or if you're not eligible for a regular SBA program that you're not eligible for the Paycheck Protection Program. So how much can you borrow? You can borrow up to 2.5 months of your average payroll expenses. And I can get into how that's calculated later, but there's a formula to calculate your average monthly payroll. And once it's calculated, you multiply that by 2.5. And the loan itself cannot exceed $10 million. So where do you get the loan? A lot of folks are saying, do I go to the SBA, the Small Business Administration? We don't feel like folks are going to be going to the SBA to get those loans. Instead, you're going to be going to your local and national lenders who are already SBA 7 lenders, and that participate in the SBA 7 program. They're all automatically qualified to provide these loans. In addition, the Treasury Secretary, Stephen Mnuchin, is automatically given the authority to designate other lenders, of which he did on Monday, included all FDI-protected banks and credit unions. It's our belief in the coming days that more lenders will become available under the Treasury Secretary's authority. In part, we believe because this is such a generous loan program that is 100% backed by the federal government. There are very minimal requirements as far as underwriting these loans. There are no collaterals required, no personal guarantees required, and a really unique feature of these loans is that the loans can convert into grants based off what the borrower spends. So the way that the bill is laid out for this provision, it looks at the 8 weeks of your expenses after the date of the origination of the loan. You'll tally everything up that you spent on payroll, spent on rent for business, on mortgages for businesses, and you spent on utilities, and you can get dollar for dollar forgiveness of the loan up to your amount. So again, that was payroll, rent for business, mortgage for business, and utilities. But of course, you cannot forgive your forgiveness exceed the amount that you actually borrowed. There's a number of conditions. Your loan forgiveness is reduced proportionally if you reduce the number of full-time employees that you had relative to a benchmark period, either the year before or the first 2 months of this year. The loan forgiveness is also reduced if you reduce wages of employees making less than $100,000 by 25%. But that's a good note about wages of $100,000. In your calculation of payroll expenses, you can count the first $100,000 that you paid an employee, but nothing beyond that. It's really targeted at middle income earners. Employers can also avoid a reduction in forgiveness because we know that a lot of employers have laid people off. If they bring back those employees and restore their wages by June 30th of this year. So if you think about it, if you laid off your employees or reduced wages or hours to help to get them through this time, if you made reductions between February 15th and April 26th of this year, you'll need to restore those employees and or bring them back to their previous wages by June 30th in order for you to get your loan forgiven. Additionally, after April 26th, you cannot make any changes to the number of employees or wages until after June 30th to be forgiven. If you laid off an employee or reduced the hours prior to February 15th of this year, you do not have to restore them to qualify for the program. So we're also getting asked, what if the business is shut down or you happen to be in an area where the governor said essential businesses can't open? That doesn't matter for this purpose. What the loan looks at is after taking a loan, were you paying the employees? Because remember, the goal of lawmakers in creating this program was to provide assistance, essentially in the form of grants to small businesses and encourage those small businesses to keep paying their employees. Now, one of the things that we're doing at the U.S. Chamber is encouraging small businesses to really understand why they're eligible, whether they're eligible for the program. And think about the loan forgiveness, what might look like in your situation on the back end as you make a decision whether or not to apply for these loans. You can learn more about this program at www.uschamber.com/SBloans. The U.S. Chamber has released a 4-step guide to prepare you for applying for a loan in the CARE Act, including emergency injury defense loan, which I'll talk about shortly, and the Paycheck Protection Program. It goes through who in detail is eligible, how you calculate your average monthly payroll cost, and what lender you might be looking for when you show up for a loan. And so there's another provision that was a part of the CARE Act that benefits small business, the self-employed, independent contractors, and non-for-profits. That's the SBA Economic Injury Disaster Loan, also known as the EIDL loan. The EIDL loan has been around for a long time. If you happen to have been affected by a tornado or a flood, you might have applied and received an EIDL loan. So who's eligible? Again, small business, non-for-profits, including faith-based. There's no restrictions here on the types of nonprofit. It's an entity that a nonprofit has fewer than 500 employees, again, and sole proprietors and independent contractors. So different from the PPP, this is an actual loan. And this is not a loan that in general that converts into a grant. You can borrow up to $2 million in working capital that's repaid over 30 years. And there's interest rates at 3.75% for profits and 2.75% for nonprofits. If you take this loan out, payments are deferred up to a year. So you don't automatically have to start paying them. It's easier for individual business to apply. Your loan is going to be based on your credit scores. You do not have to immediately produce tax returns. You can get up to $200,000 without personal guarantee, and no collateral is required for $25,000 or less. Beyond that, there's a general security interest, or sometimes it's secured with real estate, but they're trying to move away from that in this particular instance. There is an important feature that's brand new to the CARES Act. If you apply to the EIDL loan, you can request to be provided an emergency grant to be provided within 3 days, up to $10,000. The bill details what you may use the grant for, but there's no requirement. The $10,000 grant does not need to be repaid even if you're denied the loan. So if you apply for the loan, you request the emergency grant, you receive it, then are denied the loan, you still do not have to pay back the $10,000. There's some important interactions with the PPP, or the Paycheck Protection Program, that we just talked about. For example, if you end up with both, generally you would end up with both because you already gotten an EIDL loan. Maybe now that the paycheck laws are being set up for those applying, you can roll them together, but you cannot get double forgiveness. The $10,000 grant from the paycheck would come off the Paycheck Protection Program's forgiveness. There's also some requirements with respect to the paycheck protection loans that you can't double dip. In other words, if you take out the two loans to pay the same, you cannot take out the two loans to pay the same bills. So if you're thinking about doing these, you may want to think about those restrictions. So don't assume that you can do all these programs and just stack them up. What they've done is to make the paycheck program more favorable, tacked onto other programs that do not avail themselves to the paycheck protection loan. You do not apply for this loan either, the EIDL loan, by going to your local bank. You apply for it at sba.gov. And this is also one that where local chambers and other 501c6s can apply for. And hereafter, I'm going to send a link with both information on the EIDL loans and the PPP loan or program. And I'll turn it back to you, Tyler.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. So now we're going to turn it over to Carrie O'Neill, who is the Quad Cities Market President for Wells Fargo Bank. And again, if you have questions, please be sure to put them into the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. Carrie, go ahead and take it away.
Well, thank you very much, Tyler, for the opportunity today, and really good words coming from Ryan and some really good detail. So thank you for that, Ryan. I'm going to start today with just a few key messages. Congress has passed this $2 trillion coronavirus stimulus that'll provide additional resources for consumers, small businesses, and communities. And we want to commend the policymakers for taking this critical step. It's crucial that the public and private sectors work together to address the economic and social impacts of this pandemic. Just an FYI that Wells Fargo has received no funds from the federal government in response to the COVID-19 at this time. And we continue to help customers, employees, and communities impacted by COVID-19, and is working across all fronts to help our clients and customers get the assistance that they need. We are awaiting guidance from government agencies as to how to utilize the programs and disperse funds to the American people. And as it is specific to the Paycheck Protection Program, again, this program gives small businesses access to short-term cash flow assistance aimed to help deal with the immediate global impact caused by this COVID-19 pandemic. These loans are made by approved lenders like Wells Fargo that are certified by the United States Small Business Administration and are guaranteed by the federal government as well. Wells Fargo, like other lenders, is really working diligently to prepare for the distribution of funds through the Paycheck Protection Program. We do not currently have a start date for accepting applications, but once we receive final guidance on program specifics, we will know more about when the program will become operational and lenders can begin dispersing funds. Just a couple of other things, Tyler, in the interest of time, but you know, we at the bank are committed to helping our small business customers experiencing these hardships, including those resulting from coronavirus or COVID-19. And we're just facing a situation that's created unprecedented disruptions throughout the world and are responding in real time to a dynamic and fluid situation. We recognize that every small business's situation is unique and highly encourage these customers to reach out directly to Wells Fargo and speak with trained specialists to discuss options as well that are available, as well as taking advantage of the information and resources that we have on our website as well. And maybe one final thing is the Wells Fargo Foundation announced last week that it will be donating an additional $10 million to support small businesses as part of a $175 million donation overall to support the response to COVID-19. Resources will be deployed to meet the urgent needs of small businesses, $2 million of which will focus on the deployment of flexible capital in collaboration with Opportunity Fund, and will also provide immediate cash boosts and financial coaching support of entrepreneurs and their low-wage workers in coordination with Saver Life. So with that, Tyler, I will send it back over to you.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, Carrie. Now we're going to turn it over to Joel Youngs with SBDC. Joel?
Thank you for having me, and I want to say this to the small business owners who are in attendance. We hear your pain, we feel your pain, and we are doing everything. And when I say we, from the chambers to the lenders to the politicians, we're doing everything in our powers to help you ease through or get through this pandemic situation. You've heard a lot of details from Ryan, and they were fantastic, and a lot of details from Carrie, and those are fantastic. So I want to keep my message very simple. I'm going to share my screen and show you three things. We don't expect you to know the details. So if you need help with the details, that's what we're here for. If you type SBDC Davenport, you will see my name pop up. Similarly, Tom Trone will speak after me. If you type SCORE Davenport, the SCORE chapter will pop up. And we're here to help you navigate the nuances and the details of all of these programs for your particular business. So there is a lot of details, and there's a lot of details behind the scene that haven't been presented. It's our job to help you get to the right solution that's appropriate for your business and your situation. The other two things I just want to point out, you can, the SBA.gov website that Ryan was talking about earlier, that's the screen that it looks like. At the top of that screen, notice if you're going to apply for the COVID-19 EIDL, you click here. Pretty simple, pretty easy. It then leads you to a screen that has 5 different little subsets, and it takes all of about 10 minutes to complete that application. I know, because I've helped about 120 businesses do this. You'll need to know your EIN, you'll need to know your gross income for the year, and you'll need to know your cost of goods sold if that's appropriate for your business. Other than that, all the other information is stuff that's already in your head, such as your address, your name, et cetera, et cetera. The PPP program, which was the other major piece of the CARES Act, right now you can find out information about this at treasury.gov. And if you'll notice on the red banner, it's got for more information, click there, and that will do a page like that. And at the bottom link there, it says can be found there. I want to echo what Carrie said, it's a soft opening for tomorrow. They're still writing rules and regulations and processes and procedures for our lenders. It's a monumental task, and people are doing a Herculean effort to get this thing rolled out. But I keep telling my business owners, it's a soft opening tomorrow. So again, if you need help, please reach out to the SBDC Davenport or SCORE Davenport, and I'll turn it back over to Tyler, and Tom Trone will, I'm sure, further enhance what I just said. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Well, thanks, Joel, for that information. Again, if any of our participants have questions, you can enter in at the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. And we're going to get to as many of those questions as we can as time will allow. But like Joel said, we're going to turn it over to our final panelist, Tom Trone with SCORE. Tom?
Thank you, Tyler. Just a few words about SCORE. SCORE is an affiliate of the SBA. It's been around for nearly 60 years. It's a volunteer organization. It's a nonprofit. Its sole purpose is to help small businesses with any issues they might have at any stage of their business and in any condition that they might work. So there are 10,000 volunteers across the country that work in 300 chapters that assist thousands of clients every year for free. So the services of SCORE are available at this moment to small businesses that need help through this crisis and economic downturn. Locally, we have 40 SCORE mentors who are available to assist with not only the lending process, which can be quite daunting and complicated, but also just questions about how do you navigate through the crisis? How do you manage your employees? How do you work with your suppliers? How do you communicate with your stakeholders? How do you keep your customers still engaged with you so that when we come out of this, that you have a viable business? So our services can be very broad. Our mentor group has depth and breadth of knowledge in almost every business and industry you can imagine. So we can be a good set of ears to listen to your issues, and then we can help guide and advise based on knowledge and experience that we have, but also networking with others. We do a lot of networking with other SCORE chapters. We certainly work with Joel and the SBDC. We're very active with the Chamber. We have resources available. If you go to SCORE Quad Cities on Facebook, you'll see that we have a lot of resources specific to this issue, not only about the financing options that are now available, but also just managing through a crisis. And one of the ways that we communicate and share value is through workshops, and we have 2 free ones that are virtual coming up. One on April the 9th, coronavirus in your small business, then on the 28th, marketing through an economic downturn. So if you go to our Facebook page, you'll see that those workshops are there. You can sign up for them. The workshops, along with all of our services, are free to you. So reach out to us. We have a web page. We have Facebook. You'll see our phone numbers and our email address, and we are available to work with you virtually, by phone, by email, by Zoom, by whatever platform you want to use, anytime, 24/7. Thank you, Tyler.
Tyler, can I have a quick
Tyler.
PS?
Oh, that's what I was
apologize.
just going to ask for too, Joel. Go right ahead.
So all I was going to say is I failed to mention, please remember, we encourage you to work with your local lenders. So this is unprecedented times. Your local lender should be a point of contact for you for your PPP. And so we want to make sure you do that. And again, as Tom indicated, the SCORE chapter and the SBDC, we work seamlessly back and forth together. We share workloads. We try to make sure that we're meeting all of our capacity, and we're both free and confidential. And sorry about that I didn't mention it sooner. So.
Thank you, Joel.
I just had one more thing to add to Tyler, in the interest of time too, because it looks like we're done a little bit earlier, and I can have a couple, just want to say just a couple of things. Like I said before, we're working diligently to prepare for the distribution of the funds, and we don't currently have a start date for accepting applications. But once we receive final guidance, we will know more about when the program will become operational and we can begin dispersing funds. But in the meantime, I think preparation right now is key for some of these small business owners. So get prepared. Prepare by gathering your payroll registers, your financial statements and transcripts from payroll taxes paid. I don't have a complete list right now of documentation that is needed, but the more you can get ready, the better. And when you are applying, please be very thorough and complete in filling out that application. That will also go a very long way. So my coaching to all the small businesses out there is get ready and get some things gathered and scanned so that you're ready when we do start taking those applications. So thank you, Tyler.
Yeah, perfect. That's a lot of great information from everybody. And so now we're going to move into the Q&A section. I already had a lot of questions come in and some of them have been answered, but we're going to get to as many of these as we can here in the next half hour. So let's go ahead and get started. What about part-time hourly employees? Are they included in any of these programs?
Thanks, Tyler, and that's a good question. I saw a number of people with that question. Part-time employees are considered in the payroll costs, so continue to add them to. So I'm trying to send around a guide that we have, and however that you calculate your part-time employees based on their wages and hours used, I would suppose on an average is something that you would consider when putting your formula together.
So under the current rules and regulations, and notice I use the word current because things are still being finalized. They're looking at full-time equivalencies to get to 32. So if you had two people working 16 hours each, that would count as one FTE. You could actually have 32 people working 1 hour each, but that would be kind of silly. So.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. So we're going to go to the next question. In determining FTEs, is there a standard definition in terms of what number of hours per week equates to an FTE, or is it just left to what each employer considers to be a full-time employee?
32.
Very easy. I like it, Joel. All right, perfect. Next question. Can you clarify if the COVID-19 Economic Injury Disaster Loan is forgivable? A 501c6 organization is not eligible for any other loan or grant program, so wanting to know if it is forgivable.
The EIDL loan is not forgivable. The only thing that would be forgivable would be the emergency grant of $10,000. Perfect.
With the PPP loan, what is the maximum payment, if at all?
It's $10 million.
Perfect. And Ryan, can you just go over briefly just how much is in there? Is that going to be a finite amount of time? I know we had some questions about, is it first come, first serve? Can you just talk about how that application and how when it is live and when it is rolled out, just a little bit more background on the PPP?
Sure. So the PPP is supposed to be up and running tomorrow. I know that Carrie alluded to that a lot of lenders have not received the application process. It is not first come, first serve. And in order to receive it, you should be able to receive the, ideally when it's, I know that Joel had said that this is kind of, the soft start of it, but when it's in full effect, you could expect to go to the bank in the morning and then in the evening have that loan in hand.
Perfect. Another question coming in. Are all banks available to take these applications, or are just certain approved lenders approved for that?
So the Treasury Secretary approved all FDIC banks, credit unions, those that had prior been be able to distribute loans for SBA 7 loans. But we expect that there will be more lenders potentially available for this moving forward. I mean, realistically, what it comes down to is you're going to want to go to your local lender, your local bank, and call them, as Carrie had said, and see if they want are participating in this. I would imagine that almost all are, just because that just seems what I've heard around the country. And give them a call, and if they're participating, those are the folks that you'll want to be in touch with.
Perfect. A couple other questions have come in related to independent contractors. So not full-time employees, but are independent contractors covered by any of these programs, all of these programs? What can you talk about them?
It's a good question. So as I said in my statements, independent contractors were added to the Paycheck Protection Program. So independent contractors are included in both the EIDL loans and the PPP loans.
Perfect. So how does this program interact with the FFCRA, EFMLA, and ESPL payroll tax credit?
So those would be excluded. That tax credit was put into effect earlier this year. Those would be excluded payroll costs, or earlier this month, rather, or last month, I guess.
Perfect. One of the questions that we've had about the June 30th date, will they make provisions on the forgiveness date, even if there is a stay-at-home order through June 30th?
That's a good question. I have not heard about that specifically. I think it's kind of Congress is flying, where the wind goes. They will not be back until April 20th. So until that time, that is the date moving forward. And I've not heard anything on the contrary, but it's a good question.
Perfect. If somebody adds an employee, would they also be covered under PPP, or is it only employees who are working for them before the COVID-19?
So if an employer were to add an employee to their current, that I do not know. I would have to get back to you.
Okay, perfect. Joel, if you had to give some advice to a small business owner, what should they be doing in the next 2 weeks to help make sure that they're going to be viable and help weather this storm?
Contact SCORE, contact myself. That's exactly what we do during non-pandemic times. So all this does is just change the tempo and the timing and the critical need to have these conversations. I've been answering questions like Q&A primarily and most of the time I half answer the question, but many times it's often dependent upon their particular situation. So it's really troublesome to try to answer it accurately. So I've been half answering it and then telling them contact SBDC and SCORE. We're free, we're confidential, and we will get to the granular situation of your particular situation. So,
and Tyler, I might add to that is, the challenge ahead is not only about applying for the funds that are available, but it's also to triage your business and to ensure that you can survive this economic downturn. And in some cases, businesses market shut down. So working with small businesses just so they go on life support so that they maintain the structures and processes they have in place and the customer contacts for when we come out of this. And that's something that a lot of small business owners and managers have not ever done before. It may be new to us at SCORE, but together we can work through how do you have to restructure and kind of turn the lights on dim for a while until this thing comes back so that you still have a viable business on the other side. So that is separate from all the loan application work that has to be done. Businesses have to do that. How do we, and it may be an opportunity for some to kind of revisit what they do and how they do it and get rid of some things that really aren't value adding. I think businesses will do that during this period.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for that information. So another question that came in order to apply for the SBA disaster loan, does the business have to have filed their 2019 taxes already?
nope.
Perfect. Should Should we include all company paid payroll taxes in our payroll on the application when it becomes available?
Yes,
The short answers are great. They make it a lot easier, cut through everything.
Mhm.
What can an organization use the idle $10,000 loan for if they're planning to use on the PPP program? Or is there no way to utilize both of them?
You can. It's operating expenses that are not included in the request on the PPP.
Perfect. And
And
Carrie, I know,
also the idle program covers a longer time period than what the PPP does. As Ryan pointed out, you're doing average monthly payroll times 2.5 months, and then you've got some ancillary add-ons that you can add in, such as a mortgage payment or rent.
Loan run, no need to,
Then that you might want to consider that. But that would be really the only exception. Otherwise, there's not a hurry or a rush. Yes.
perfect. Now, Carrie, I know that we talked about a lot of still unknown and waiting on the SBA to come out, but what are some of the things that Wells Fargo is doing to help some of their clients in this time of need?
That's a really good question, Ryan, and quite a bit actually, as far as payment deferment and things of that nature. So I would encourage, if you have a business loan with Wells Fargo, to contact your lender. There is, we've got some relief programs out there. We have a link, if you're in our online banking site, for example, and you carry a residential mortgage loan with us, you can simply click on a link right next to it to go down the path of requesting some relief on your payments for residential mortgages. We do the same thing for home equity. We also have a program whereby we're looking at our commercial real estate loans. Some folks have probably lost tenants, or the tenants perhaps are not paying. And so there is a process whereby we can look at payment deferment on some of those commercial loans. I think it's important that we all come together during this tough time and provide relief where it makes sense and for these clients.
Great. That's great information, Carrie. Another question. I've had several businesses unsure if they qualify for the Paycheck Protection Program, and they've already laid off employees or closed entirely. Is there something that you can do to, it's their understanding that they can simply rehire them, paying if approved for the forgivable loan, even if they aren't coming into work, so that their staff can still get paid. Is this true, or is there caveats yet?
no, that is true. So there's a number of businesses out there that remain to pay their employees, although they're not working. Again, the idea behind this is that businesses continue to get this loan in order to pay their employees, whether or not they're actually working.
Perfect. Now, Joel, we have coming to you directly. Do you represent just the Iowa side small businesses?
So to use my services, you either have to live in Iowa or your business has to be in Iowa. To use Tom's services, he crosses the river. However, I do have a counterpart who's at the Western Illinois campus along the Moline River. Her name is Ann Friedrichsen, and all of the chamber communications that have been going out have included her contact information.
Perfect. Thank you, Joel. Another question that came in is, I am a restaurant owner who is currently closed and will not open for carryout only. My anticipated reopen date is May 1st. I do not anticipate needing all my former employees until a month after reopening. Therefore, I will not be able to match any former employment levels in 2 months period from April 15th to June 15th. How will I qualify for the loan if I'm not able to match previous employment levels?
Sorry, I was trying to give people other people a chance. I'm trying to hog the answers. So what they do is they go historically back to a time period, and I apologize, I don't remember if the exact date is February 15th or not, but it's approximately around that. And they take a look at what your employment level was as of that date. Perhaps somebody else has a more correct answer, but it's just, that's one of the kinds of questions that I just keep looking up whenever I'm talking to a client rather than try to keep it in my head.
Perfect. Next question. We've gotten a few about this one, so I wanted to come back to it. I know that we've touched on it before, but what is the debt forgiveness protocol for the Payroll Protection Program loan?
So the debt is forgiven if the borrower that is eligible for the forgiveness equal to the amount the borrower spent on the following items. So there's a couple of them during an 8-week period, begins on the date of receiving the loan. The payroll costs, the interest and mortgage obligation incurred in the ordinary course of business, the rent of the business, payment of utilities, electricity, gas, water, transportation, telephone, internet, etc. And for borrowers with tipped employees, additional wages paid to those employees.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that, Ryan. Question. I have applied for the SBA loan and the emergency $10,000 grant, but have heard no response on this. When can we expect to see the finances coming through on any of these programs, or when can we expect to hear back? I'm asking everyone to look into their crystal balls and try to predict the future.
Could you repeat that question? I'm sorry.
Get back to it here. Let's see. It was related to hearing back on the federal disaster loan, on when they can expect to hear back or expect to hear an answer on when those finances may be coming through.
So the disaster loan, it's actually a grant. You should hear within 3 days.
Perfect.
So as far as the loan itself, we have human beings looking at all of these lending requests, and they're adjudicating them, and it's just going to take time. And so the infrastructure is trying to cope with all of the demand. And so I wish we had an answer, but it is one of the reasons why we are encouraging people to get in the queue now, because waiting to get in the queue just delays when your request is going to get acted on.
Perfect. Now, Tom, I know that SCORE is working closely with a lot of people who are coming there. Can you just give a basic rundown on if a company came to you today, what does that process look like? What are you able to help them today, and what's it look like going forward in the coming weeks?
Well, every business is different, so they're generally interested in what programs are available from what source. So we're talking about the federal programs here, but Illinois and Iowa, we serve both sides, 15 counties between the two states, have different programs. So making our clients in Illinois aware of what's available and specific to Illinois, what's available in Iowa. There are different grant programs, loan programs, different organizations providing different sources of funding for different purposes. So that's one of the issues, just what program is relevant to you and available to you that you can qualify for. And then the other questions relate to what I've mentioned earlier, was just, what do I do? How do I keep the wheels on? How do I tell my employees? How do I pick which employees I lay off, and how do I do that? And what are the benefits, and where do they go? And there's a lot of small companies that don't have the formal functions of business that we're all used to in bigger companies. They don't have an HR department. They may not have a CFO. These are individuals that do every function in the business, and they're not prepared for the level of complexity that this situation has created, but that all the programs are also fraught with. So we helped them kind of talk through who they are and where they are and what fits and what do they do about the business to keep it alive. So that's where a lot of our questions are coming from. And as we have talked here, every business is different. So we ask all these different questions, but the answers may be different for every different business. Every condition is different. They're at a different starting place with different capacities. So that's why this becomes a daunting task for all of us, but we're up to it.
Absolutely. And one of the unique things that we have being in the Quad Cities is that we have 2 separate states and a whole lot of different jurisdictions. And so when the state programs are brought up, if somebody lives in Iowa, but has their business in Illinois, which state would they go to? The one that they reside in or the one in which their business is located in?
Pick one. Doesn't matter. Pick one.
Perfect. All right. So we're coming up towards the end of our call. So what we're going to do is we're going to go around to each of the panelists to give some final remarks before we wrap up. So we're going to start here with Tom Trone. Tom, want to go ahead and start?
Yeah, we've said this throughout, but just there's a multitude of resources available to help you through this situation, and you have several here on the call. We can help you with the preparation for the loan process. We can help you with the restructuring of your business and evaluation of what's going to happen afterwards. So we have 40 people here locally that would be glad to help you through the situation. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Tom. Carrie, your final thoughts on the call?
Well, I have a couple, Tyler. First of all, I think this is the time when we all need to be really aware of the scams. And so just be extra diligent out there as a small business owner and protect yourself that way. Our fraudsters seems to come to the forefront whenever there is a situation like this. So please take extra precaution. I'll just reiterate that we'll know more about when the program will become operational and we can begin dispersing funds. So more to come, hopefully soon. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Carrie. Ryan, last thoughts from the U.S. Chamber that you'd like to tell our members?
Sure. I'm sorry I wasn't able to answer everyone's questions here. And thank you for having me, Tyler. It's good to be with the panel. Obviously, right now it's uncertain. Businesses are panicked because we've never faced anything like this. But I'd like to first say that the U.S. Chamber is with every single business out there. We're trying to get as much information as possible to those businesses in such a convenient way. That being said, after this call, I am going to send to Tyler our quick one-page guide on the economic injury disaster loans and then the Paycheck Protection Program, which is about 4 pages. They're very clear, very easy to read, kind of run you line by line of what you need to do. So I appreciate being with you this afternoon, and hopefully better times will be ahead.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Ryan. Joel, final thoughts?
We're in unprecedented times, but in chaos, there is opportunity. We're encouraging our business owners not only to survive this, but to think how they can pivot or do changes to their business to grow their business and make it stronger. Every person who's here is got the passion and the drive to help you get to that point. And so we encourage you to reach out to this infrastructure that's in place. Thank you again for all that you do for the community. Most of us live here, and we are trying to make this as strong economically as we possibly can. Thanks to the Chamber, the U.S. Chamber, Wells Fargo, Tom Trone, and SCORE, and again, you, the business community, for all that you do in supplying jobs to the community. Thank you.
Thanks, Joel. I think that's a really important thing to remember, is that this is only a temporary time that we're going to be involved in this, and there are going to be brighter days ahead. We need to weather the storm, but I know that as Quad citizens and as people who live and work in the Quad Cities, that we'll get through this. We had it last year with the record flooding on the Mississippi, and we have it again this year with COVID-19. But one thing that this community always does is it always works hard. It'll bring back the jobs. It'll bring back our economic prosperity, and things will get better. We have to just weather this short storm here, help each other out, continue to visit our businesses in the community, and we'll get through this very storm very quickly. So I want to thank our panelists for being with us today. I also want to thank you for joining as well. Again, this webinar was recorded and it will be available on our website this afternoon. And as always, you can get the most up-to-date information on our website, quadcitieschamber.com. And be sure to join us tomorrow morning as we have another webinar with the senior senator from Iowa and the president pro tempore of the United States Senate, Chuck Grassley, at 9 a.m. I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tyler.